Hi all, so today I want to go ahead and clarify a few things regarding a previous video and sort of do a remake with a better explanation regarding torque converter lockup. I received some feedback on that video, and unfortunately it sounds like there was a lot of confusion, and additionally with that people had messaged me thinking there was something wrong with their vehicles. And so I want to explain a few things, and hopefully I can explain it a little bit better in this video. And I will go ahead and link the two so you can kind of see the differences that I'm trying to speak about. But essentially what I was trying to say and what was said appears to not be the same. So that's why I want to go ahead and do a little bit of a follow-up video with this and explain it a little bit further. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is explain a torque converter. So what it does is this is going to be a major component with automatic transmission vehicles. And what it does is it links the engine and the transmission together. And so essentially the engine power has to be distributed through the transmission into the wheels. But the thing is that it can't do so efficiently on a one-on-one basis when the car is stopped. So for example, if my torque converter were to be locked up all the time, my car would have stalled right now. And that's because essentially the transmission will bog the engine down too much to the point where it does not have enough power to essentially stay on. So what it will do is utilize fluid pressure to keep those components separated until the car is going fast enough where it is safe to lock them together. And so that's just what happened now, and we'll explain that process a little bit more in depth. But essentially, lockup is a normal function of vehicles. It actually is really good for a vehicle because when you are utilizing the fluid pressure to essentially multiply torque, what it will do is it will actually generate more heat. And so heat is the number one destruction factor of a transmission or a torque converter, so it's best to keep them cool, and lockup is actually a good way of doing it. So with that, how do we know when our torque converter is locked up? Well, it's very hard to tell on newer vehicles, especially with vehicles that are so advanced and have so many gears. It's very hard to tell when the process actually occurs. Most of the time, it's actually a little subtle dip in RPM, and essentially you'll notice that the engine and transmission, there's a little bit more responsiveness when it comes to putting your foot back on the accelerator to accelerate. It doesn't feel like it needs to take a second. And so what I mean by this is that the RPMs when you're going a consistent speed, for example, I'm going 37 to 38 miles an hour. And if I take my foot off the gas and put my foot back on the gas, which I just did, there's no increase or decrease in RPM. And this is only if I'm going on at a constant speed, not if I'm trying to go faster or slower. This is where there was some confusion last time. So also what happens is when the torque converter is engaged, the RPMs will increase and decrease with speed, but not do so in a dramatic manner. And I will explain that, and because of the fact what I will do is I will actually do a few turns and a few recovery accelerations per se, and show you what I mean a little bit more in depth. Right now my light's about to turn green. Oh my goodness, the arrow just turned green. Okay, well we gotta wait a second, sorry guys. Okay, so I'm gonna accelerate a little bit more slowly, and the reason being is that lockup happens sooner when you're accelerating gently. So I'm gonna use fifth gear as an example because the first few gears are pretty close together. So right now, I'm in fifth gear. Okay, my foot comes off the gas, and then as you notice, as I'm slowing down, the RPMs are also coming down, but it's not very dramatic. Actually, I think it just disengaged there. Let me go ahead and allow that to re-engage. Hang on. So right now, if you notice, I'm at 1500 RPMs. My foot is completely off the gas, and the RPMs are going down with the speed. But now what I'm doing is now I'm going to go ahead and speed up. With the torque converter being engaged, it actually is increasing the RPMs with speed, but it's not in a dramatic fashion. And so while RPM fluctuations can occur, it will increase proportionally to the speed of the vehicle rather than having a sort of slipping feel. And we'll go ahead and address that in a moment. So as you saw, English is just not my thing today. decrease in speed and increase in speed will allot for increase and decrease in RPMs. The thing is that with the torque converter engaged, it's going to be direct drive and not be a dramatic increase and feel as if things are slipping. And so now we'll go ahead and do this again. And there's a car behind me, so I can't do this very effectively at the moment. And I'll show you guys what it looks like when the torque converter clutch disengages in the same gear and then afterwards re-engages. We'll talk about that in a moment. All right, so let's go ahead and do this then. And one thing to note is that these new cars can go into multiple cycles of lockup and disengagement. And that's actually normal. It's not something that is going to hurt the vehicle. A lot of vehicles are now equipped with multi-disc clutches for the torque converter. And so that's why there's a wider range of lockup is due to that. A single disc lockup clutch, usually you would see those in older transmissions that had 3 or 4 speeds, and so it would lock up only in the top gear. But now with vehicles that push for efficiency, it is much more, it's going to lock up much more quickly. And so with that, let's go ahead and actually come off of a turn here. We shifted into 3rd gear just a moment. Okay, so with that, looking at the tachometer, there's a much higher increase in RPM, and you saw a pause and a dip, and now the torque converter clutch is disengaged. Okay, so with that, torque converter is disengaged, going into acceleration, higher increase, lockup clutch engages, now the car is back in direct drive. So what I meant to say in the last video, and this is where there was some confusion, was that the RPMs will not have a big increase or decrease upon reapplication of the throttle. And so I wanted to clear that up, as that was the main point of confusion, is some people were saying, no, there's going to be RPM increases with speed. And yes, you are correct. The RPM will increase and decrease with speed of the vehicle, but it's not going to be dramatic like it would if the torque converter clutch was disengaged. And so right now, for example, I'm resting in 6th gear. We're at 1500 RPMs at 50 miles an hour. If I stay going 50 miles an hour, the RPMs should stay at 1500. Now, if I take my foot off, the clutch is still engaged. The car is now slowing down, so the RPMs come down, but then reapplying the throttle, my foot just went back on the gas. I'm speeding up, the RPMs are going up, but it's increasing with speed and not a dramatic increase due to a sudden throttle change. And so that's the main difference when it comes to torque converter clutch lockup, is that the RPM increase would not be as significant. So let's go ahead and do this again, coming to the red light. Clutch disengages, actually downshift first, and then clutch disengages, which it just did. Going back on the throttle, you're going to notice a much more dramatic increase in RPM. We'll do this one more time just to get you a better view. Okay, so I'm going to start slowly, let it shift up into its 3rd gear. Usually is when it really starts to like lock up per se. So I didn't give it enough to actually lock up. Going back on the throttle, increase in RPM, lockup occurs, transmission shifts. So I'm hoping that cleared things up. With that, torque converter videos are rather difficult to do just because they're so seamless now when it comes to lockup functions, and cars cycle through them so much. They cycle through lockup and disengagement consistently, rather than something that would just be for freeway driving. And so I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to do so. I do appreciate any feedback on videos, and I do hope that this cleared some items up, and I hope to hear from you again. I'll see you soon with another video. Bye.